Hi, and welcome to my As I Walk story part 3. And this story is a bit of a tragedy, I'm afraid. And if you've been watching my other two stories, you'll have noted that it was a really romantic fairy tale, and how my husband proposed to me in the gym that I was working, a bit like an officer and a gentleman. He whisked me off my feet after his serving in Afghanistan, and it was really, really romantic. So I want to continue the story. And if you are a relative of his, you may want to go and watch another Instagram or Facebook video or something, because this is quite horrific if it be too emotional for you. If you're his friend and you're curious as to what has happened, then stay tuned. And if I don't know you and you didn't know my husband, this is quite an important message for anyone out there. The messages in this story are pretty profound into what's happening today, and particularly with a view to the moment with the credit crunch and electricity prices going up and everybody getting very, very stressed. This is really important because the strain of that can have a toll on somebody. And I'll tell you a bit about the story, continuing on from where I left off. So my husband proposed to me, and I fell pregnant actually before we even got married. And so we literally had about 5 weeks to prepare the wedding. I had my first son, who was premature, and I mentioned in the last video how my husband was amazing with my son, giving him kangaroo care and basically being with him every night, feeding to him, because he was such a tiny baby and he was in neonatal for 2 weeks. And so he was a great dad and he loved his kids. And I had my second child 2 years later, my daughter, and she was just a real surprise. Actually, we weren't really planning anything there. So my daughter is amazing. She's such a funny little thing, and we absolutely love our family and our children. And we were struggling a bit for money. We'd just literally moved into our house. Everything was a bit of a whirlwind after my husband proposed. I had 2 children, we moved twice, so everything was quite fast paced. And but we were very lucky because we'd found this amazing house. It was an old coach house. Had a lot of work though, that was the main thing, quite a strain, because with old houses, they take up a lot of time and a lot of work. And so we had quite a humble life. My husband started working at a college because he decided to come out of the RAF simply because he wanted to be with his son. Even though he was working weekends, it was sort of the going away for those sort of periods of time, and he realised the value of seeing his son grow up. And then when my daughter came along, even more so. So he decided to take a job as a technician in a college, and he worked really, really hard. I mean, there were points where he was cycling to work quite a long way and back just to save money. And he'd come home, I'd be flat out with the 2 babies, and he'd carry on, make the dinner and support me really well. So we had a very close family unit and a humble life. We didn't spend very much, and we went camping if we went on holiday, and which was, my husband was in his element, because being in the military, he loved all that sort of thing. Because as time went on, after my children, I usually had time off for about a year with both of them, and I was still working at the gym. I worked part-time after my children were born, and gradually got back into training people again. My husband was working his way up also in the college, until eventually he started running a whole department in construction and engineering. But he started taking on more and more projects, so he was very driven, very ambitious, and he wanted to always give 110% to whatever he did. And it did worry me a bit, because I did hear on the radio one time about how the demands of life are making people work longer and longer hours. And I heard this thing about people suddenly dropping dead and because of overwork. And I said to him, this is Civvy Street isn't like the military. You don't get R&R. You have to pace yourself. And of course he didn't. He would give 110% everything he did and just keep going and going. But weekends, we made sure that Saturday was Daddy Day. I would work on a Saturday and he would spend time with the children playing Lego and having daddy time, basically, which was valuable. I mean, I really recommend as a family you find one day, if whoever partner is the main worker, that they have one day of valuable time with the children, because that really, really helps. And we had a good thing going. And then Sunday, we'd have a family day out. We'd go walking or do something together, and it was really nice. So as time went on, eventually where I was working, it was taken over by new management, and we'd all been there about 18 years or so, and I think she had it in her to get rid of the old gym team, get in new fresh blood and get in some youngsters, not have to pay them so much. And I felt that I was going to be pushed out at some point. Now, I had some clients there that I'd been training for about 5 or 6 years, and this was very stressful, particularly to a point where, with my children, I couldn't actually, with working in a gym, it's shift hours. So as a family person, it's very difficult. There's not that flexibility in hours, and I kept pushing and saying I need flexible working hours. And in the end, I was able to go in, open up the gym for an hour, leave, take my children to school, come back, and then work the rest of my shift, which, wasn't ideal. It costing me a fortune in petrol, and it was just very stressful. But I gave it 100% and tried to make it work. And my kids, occasionally might have got ill or, have a late night and I couldn't get them up. So that would then make occasionally me late for work. Now, one morning I forgot my staff card, and so I waited outside, and I had to wait until the doors opened, which is when the members came in, so I should have been there to open up. And so in the diary I put that I was on time, because I was, but I was just outside. And this was caught on camera of fraud in terms of fraudulent paperwork, because I'd put in that I was on time, and on the camera it showed that I came in later. So there was a mix-up there, and this was obviously their ammunition to get rid of me. So the next thing I know is I've got a disciplinary for fraudulent paperwork. And do you know what? I just thought, I've been here 18 years. I had started my freelance personal training and thought, my husband said, look, don't worry, I will support you. He was on really good money at the time. He was now head of department, and and so basically I handed in my resignation. Now, there was a time when the manager actually had me in her office for about 4 hours, asking me everything about the gym team. And I came home and I said to my husband, you're going to have to get me up to the hospital. I have a really bad chest pain here and I think I'm having a heart attack. It was so bad, I'd never felt anything like that before. So we went up to A&E. We were there about 4 hours. The pain didn't go. And then as soon as I was called in to the consultant room, the pain went. So they did the health checks, they did my heart checks, and basically I was fine. It just went. And they said, don't worry, I think it was just anxiety. That was fine, it was just anxiety. So I went home, thought nothing of it. Now, as time went on, I started doing well with my personal training freelance. My husband was headhunted for a company in virtual reality. And then sadly, he was made redundant, and he absolutely gave everything. He was working day and night, contacting people, putting his whole passion into this because he absolutely loved virtual reality. And he was, really doing really well in terms of making loads of contacts and things. And anyway, so he was actually made redundant. And we think it was a little bit political because in some companies it's, who you're pally with that stays. And we think it was a little bit unfair dismissal because, the other guys that were working were not doing half as much as my husband, not getting us half as many leads. And he was very distressed about it. And he said, don't worry, I'll go freelance. Now, my husband had been freelance before, and he was probably deep down very worried about it because he knows how stressful it is having your own business. I was okay because I had, clients and I was doing fine. And so he was very worried about it. And all of a sudden, during this 2 weeks garden leave, he started doing up the house. And he went from sitting down on his computer to suddenly deciding to renovate our house. And we'd got a loan to help do up the house. And he said, okay. I said, look, let's do what we can do and hire in people to do what we can't do, the dangerous jobs and things like that. Of course, he was up a ladder, plastering the outside, rendering the outside of the house, which really worried me. And he was just going hell for leather in these 2 weeks. Then he went up to Leicester with the RAF to do a celebratory event, and came back and he was exhausted. And one weekend, so when he came back after that, we had a little bit of a row because I was very worried. I said, look, I think you're doing too much. And he turned around to me and he said, I had chest pain that wouldn't go away. And I thought this was because we'd had a row, and I think and I said, okay. And it didn't, and because he said he had chest pain and it didn't go away, I thought, oh, it's probably just anxiety like I had. And the next day he was in bed and he wasn't very well and he started coughing. And then the following day I said to him, look, just take it easy. Just, do some emails, setting up your freelance business, and, don't do anything too strenuous. So, because we thought that the chest pain was anxiety, we didn't go to the doctors, although I was very worried. And I said, look, just rest. So, the next thing I know is he's up and about, and he's saying, right, I've got to go and do some work for my mum, help my mum out. And I said, no, I think you should just rest, just sit on the computer. No, I need to do it. And this was on the Monday. My husband was trying to get stuff ready for our chickens. We had some chickens, and he found some turf, and he rang me up. And he said, I've got some turf in the car. This was a Tuesday, actually, yeah. He said, I've got some turf in the car from B&Q, and it's steaming. I need to get it home, get it laid out, but is that okay? And the Tuesday night, he was coughing, and I rang B&Q, which is where we got the turf from, and I said, I don't think that turf you sold us was right, because my husband's been coughing, and I'd heard there's like Legionnaire's disease that you can get from things like, the earth, and from turf and things like that. So I was really worried. I said, I think he might have caught something from your turf and everything. Then on the Wednesday, he was running around trying to lay this turf, doing this, that and the other. And I remember thinking, he's not had anything to drink. And I was busy with the children, the school run, picked them up, made their tea. And I kept thinking, I must take him a drink, because he was going backwards and forwards with the wheelbarrow, trying to lay this turf ready for the chicken cage that was arriving. And he was, sweating away. It was about 9 o'clock at night that he finished, and it was dark, and he made a joke. He came in and he said, I've done it. He said, look outside. He said, the grass looks amazing. And of course it was pitch black, so we didn't really see anything. Laughed, and then I said, look, do you mind if I go to bed? I'm really exhausted. And he was concerned because my car needed to go in for a service, and he kind of got quite angry, and he said, what are we going to do about your car? What are you going to do? And I said, okay, don't worry. I said, we'll figure it out tomorrow. I was supposed to be working, and I said I might not even work because I don't feel too well myself. I was supposed to be doing a little job I had part-time in the morning. So I said, let's just see what happens in the morning. So I said, look, I'm just going to put on my meditation app and go to bed. So I did that. I put my headphones on, went to bed. And all I remember